Welcome to the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast, please follow, hit the like button, or any subscribes. It really helps us with the algorithms. Santa Cruz Coffee Break is produced by the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. All opinions are those of the speakers. We invite you to join us on the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF for more fun. Now, let's get on with this installment of Santa Cruz Coffee Break. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 36th Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum podcast. And today we're going to go right to Pete Madsen. One of the purposes of this podcast is to expose you to players who, if you don't live in a region, you might not know that these really great players and teachers are out there. And Pete's regional for us here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but just a fantastic teacher, an unbelievable picker. As I was going through trying to figure out which path to follow, whether it was going to be finger picking or flat picking or whatever we're going to talk about, and then I'm enrolled in his electric Led Zeppelin class, so it's pretty all over the board. I hope we have a good time. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you. Great to be here. Yeah, all over the board.
A little bit.
We're going to cover all the boards here.
I'm thinking that is going to be fun. Now look, we can get to the speaker just like that. So, Tad.
Yeah, well, let's start at the beginning. Pete, okay. Introduce. Yeah, Pete, where are you from? We know where you are now. Where'd you start out?
Not far from where I am, actually. I grew up in the East Bay. I live in Richmond right now. I grew up in El Cerrito. I have lived in Los Angeles, and I lived in Norway for a short period of time when I was a teenager. But for the most part, I'm an East Bay boy. That's where I currently live. It's, all the guitars and things that I'm surrounded by are in Richmond, California.
Yeah. We'll edit that out so nobody goes by and tries to steal them all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I didn't tell you what the address is.
No.
Oh, okay.
This was East Richmond. This is
or West. Or
West
South.
Richmond. Yeah, that's where it is. What'd you do as a kid? How'd you get to where you are?
How did I get hooked? I can tell you how I got hooked on music, and it's kind of an obvious thing. I was a child of the 60s, and so the Beatles were my first musical influence. And I love the Beatles. My first album I ever got was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I got so hooked on the Beatles, I told my mom I wanted to change my name to Paul. She didn't go for it. I'm still Pete. And then it was Jimi Hendrix. That was another sort of explosion in my mind. It was like, whoa, what's that? And from then on, it was pretty, music was just always a part of my life and part of my growing up and experiences. I have had several different transitions into different types of music, and we could talk a long time about all of that, but the first sort of things that got me really rolling were the rock and roll of the 60s and 70s.
So you started out, you got a guitar and started there?
Yeah, I forced my parents to buy me an electric guitar. My first guitar was a Harmony electric guitar. I forget, and I had some small amplifier, and I had that for a few years. Later on, when I moved to Norway, I got another electric guitar. And that's when I started to actually practice and play. There's not a whole lot to do where I was living in Norway, so it was an opportune time for me to actually play my guitar and practice and learn what I could at that time.
So was it a Norwegian electric guitar?
No, I don't.
Norwegian wood?
No, it was a Japanese electric guitar. I think it was made from Japanese wood. It was a Ibanez Artist, as I recall. Yeah, it was a good guitar. It was like a Les Paul kind of type of guitar, double cutaway, and really well made. But again, I was really into rock and roll at that time, listening to hard rock and AC/DC and Van Halen, and, Deep Purple. Those were my bands at that time.
I'm sure you say the Beatles first. I'm sure you've seen the Get Back film.
You know, it's funny. I've watched about half of it.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on it? How do you look at it as where you're at in your age right now, and when you look back and think what was going on in your world when that was really happening?
Um, so having well, first off, watching the what I've watched of Get Back, it's minimally interesting to me to see how they were functioning, you know, in that studio. I also could tell you could tell that they were getting ready to break up and go their separate ways and stuff. And it just like I look at John, and he goes, he doesn't seem very serious about this. You know, he feels like he's really into Yoko and all this. And so I mean, so watching it on a level, I kind of wish I'd seen something like that maybe a couple of years earlier with them. You know, like how they wrote together. I think it would have been more interesting for me, not when the band is about to break up, kind of thing. But it is kind of interesting, you know, like a song like Get Back, you know, how did that come about? Oh, it was about, you know, anti-immigration things and stuff like that. Oh, that's kind of cool.
And you sit there and watch Paul write "Let It Be,"
Yeah.
which is pretty astounding. But I'm amazed at how he kept the drugs and the alcohol out of it.
I was told by someone who said he was around at the time that there was a lot of drugs and
Oh
alcohol.
yeah, there was. Look at him. You know, I mean, Ringo's barely awake.
Yeah.
I mean, for
I
most of
thought he
it.
was just a quiet guy.
Yeah, no, he's barely awake, but you can see it. You can see it in Paul, and you can see it in John. You know, for sure.
I just think, you know, I think what's interesting, having grown up during that time as a kid, I grew up in Berkeley. My dad was a professor at Berkeley, and you had all the free speech stuff going on in some of the riots and stuff. That music is of a particular time. And for those of us who grew up in that time, it's going to have, I think, a certain amount of meaning to us, you know, when, you know, it was kind of anything goes musically, you know, it was just such an expansive period of music. And the Beatles were experimenting. They started off with primarily rock band, but then they brought in all these other elements and all the production stuff they did. And then Jimi Hendrix, like I say, you know, he had this hard rock thing, but it was also, he had the sort of folky Dylan influence and all this going. It was just so much that was allowed to happen. And, you know, when I look on that period of music and just the culture at the time, what was going on in the culture, you know, it was a lot of a big awakening for a lot of folks. And if you didn't grow up during that time, people grow up later. I don't think you can fully sort of grasp that. You know, you can watch a CNN special or something and just like, hey, you can see what was going on there. But you weren't there. You know, it's kind of like, you know, yeah, this is what was happening. And even as a kid, you know, I was kind of aware, you know, Vietnam and you know, the protests and things going on, free speech. You know, it was out there on the periphery. You know, I was still just a kid wanting to play, you know, football or whatever and stuff and play my guitar. But yeah, but it's a very special time, I think, and it'll probably never be duplicated.
It is. I'm of that same age. I'm of that same era and grew up in that. I look back now at what these guys were writing. You know, I mean, holy cow! It's like, well, it's not a 1-4-5, you know, and boy, that's a nice bridge. You know, where'd that come from, and all that stuff. So, and you look at everybody else. You know, the Stones were working off the blues, and Hendrix was working off the blues for sure, but
Mhm.
Peter, Paul, and Mary were folk, and you know, all that was going on. I mean,
Yeah, and I think it was at that point you weren't in one camp or the other necessarily. You would listen to a poppy, syrupy song, and or you would listen to Hendrix and Cream and the heavy stuff that was going on. I don't think it was so segmented and differentiated that you had to be in this camp or that camp. You know?
I think radio did that,
Yeah,
you know, because there
yeah,
wasn't a lot of, you know, there wasn't the Neil Young channel, you
yeah.
know, or,
There was no Spotify at the time either. You know?
yeah, there was no Spotify, you know, so there was no mixing it around. Were your parents supportive of playing music
Um,
until you told them you wanted to do it forever?
you know, I think they were politely supportive. You know, my parents said they wanted us kids, my brother and my sister and I, to find our own way. They never really tried to force anything on us, like you're going to be a doctor or you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It was like you find out for yourself who you want to be and what you're going to do. So in that way, it was supportive. I had a lot of freedom to do whatever I want. Maybe too much freedom to a certain extent, but it was always up to me, I think, to really sort of figure out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to play. My father, he liked music a lot. He loved music. He liked to listen to a lot of jazz and Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday and stuff. And I think he tolerated the Beatles. He liked the song "When I'm 64" because he was going to be 64 at some point. But yeah, I think that it was more like, all right, I think the heavier stuff definitely wasn't gonna. They're like, why are you listening to that? But then eventually I had my own room and I was downstairs and I was a little separated from the rest of the family, so I could rock out on my own.
The basement room, yes,
with an exit to the garage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basement room, exit to the garage, some kind of toilet.
There was
in the corner.
I don't know. I want to hear about this, Richard. Some kind of toilet.
It was just like a toilet there, and sometimes
we had a real toilet. Yeah, we had a real toilet there. What was great, my parents would go to bed pretty early, and I would sneak the car out from the garage, and I would take the car when I was like 15 years old, and I'd back it out on this little hill, and then I started up. And I can say that now because my parents aren't around here anymore. But should I be admitting that on a podcast?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay, next question.
Do you remember your first gig? Do you remember the first time you played out for people?
I do. I played at a talent show. There was a group of like 6 of us. I think we had 2 or 3 guitar players. And we played at this talent show at a high school. And I remember it was just this one riff that we kept repeating over and over. And I remember the riff. It was dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 and I think somehow the repetition just kind of logged itself in my memory banks, and that's all we did for like 4 minutes. But
so you're like the precursor of EDM.
What's EDM?
Electronic dance music.
Oh, electronic dance. Sorry.
I was thinking more. It was more on the lines of like a John Lee Hooker, boogie.
I kind of in a slowed down way, but no lyrics, no nothing. It was just kind of like, but that was my first gig. Talent show. I must have been about 11 or 12, I want to say. So yeah.
And did that band stay together long?
No. I think after that gig, that was it. I don't remember what happened after that.
Are you still in touch with anybody you played with in high school? I am, and it's really an unusual situation. It's like 8 or 9 of us that were musicians in high school together are now getting on the phone once a month.
Wow.
Oh, it's wild.
So high school, I didn't really play in any bands in high school, and that's when I went to Norway. So I was thinking of my first real band where we played in some clubs and stuff. I still have contact with like the singer in that band who was my girlfriend, and she lives in Nashville now, so we just Facebook message each other and stuff. But I don't think I'm in touch with anybody else from that band. It's too bad. It's too bad. I'd like to know what they're doing.
Yeah,
I'll go find out.
We learn differently. We had to learn either as a group or we had to like play the record slow, or the tape slow to get it, to get it. But
and therefore we learned everything in the wrong key because we slowed it down and the pitch didn't change, or the pitch changed.
Yeah, we learned a lot of stuff in E flat.
Yeah, well, especially if you were listening to Hendrix.
Okay, which is okay. I mean, yeah,
E flat's a good key.
Yeah. What turned you onto the blues? Was there an aha moment?
There was, but I have to sort of differentiate between electric blues and acoustic blues for me, and they're really kind of 2 different animals. And so is electric guitar and acoustic guitar. the first aha moment for me for electric blues was back in the '80s, and I saw Albert Collins, Texas blues guy, and it was an experience of every note seemed to like just pierce you. You know, it was just the way he attacked the instrument was just like every one of those notes had meaning, and it was just kind of, I called him the Iceman. And it was like an ice pick, really. I mean, in a good way. Having an ice pick kind of just kind of, it's like, whoa, that's meaningful stuff. So I saw him one other time in Slims, and his playing, he's a very unique player. He played in a weird tuning, and I didn't sit down and try to cop a bunch of his licks or anything, but it just the expression he had in his playing was just monumental. For acoustic blues, that was a more of a different kind of a thing for me. It was I was listening as I got into acoustic stuff. I was listening more to like Leo Kaki and John Fahey and Merle Travis. Those were my big three. And then I started to go, well, where did this stuff all come from? So I started diving backwards into earlier blues stuff. And as I sort of got more into, learning the music of those players and really studying it pretty diligently, I was sort of like became enamored with like, just what was Blind Blake doing? I mean, the recorded record of what we have there, if you don't, you're not a guitar player, you're not really aware of what that person's really doing, but the way he would syncopate his bass lines and stuff like that, I was like, that was kind of an aha moment for me. It's like, this is incredible playing. I think we have a tendency to think of life before we were on the planet as being sort of primitive, and we're all constantly evolving. But this was a style of playing that I was just like, this is one person playing an acoustic guitar and keeping separate bass lines and treble and things. So down in the acoustic realm was kind of a real aha moment for me, and on the electric realm was the Albert Collins kind of experience.
When was that? When you were, where are we talking about for time?
For Albert Collins, was probably mid '80s, 1986, '87, somewhere in there. They saw him with the acoustic blues. I didn't even start playing fingerstyle acoustic till about 1998. So early 2000s is when I started to actually discover the acoustic blues and dive into that arena.
Have you done the Clarksdale trip?
I have, actually, yeah.
I,
A few years ago, my wife and I went to New Orleans, and we drove up the highway with 49, and headed up to Clarksdale. Went to Morgan's Freeman's Club, Ground Zero. Saw a guy named Lucius Spiller, who was really good.
yeah.
Have you heard him?
Yeah, I saw something. I saw something there, and it was just probably the same guy. I mean, I don't know, but wow.
I think he's a regular there. He's a Clarksdale native, and I think he plays. There's two big clubs there. There's Ground Zero, and there's another one I think it's called Reds or something like that. And he's probably a couple nights a week. He's probably at one of those clubs. He plays with the band sometimes. He plays solo sometimes, but yeah, he's an amazing player. He's not what you call a purist. He's playing an electric guitar, and some of it sounds like he's doing some of the pre-war blues stuff, but he's mixing it up with Hendrix and stuff like that. And it's a really neat combination of things he does.
Cool. Wonderful. I'm trying to think what I remember when I went. I was working in Nashville, and I decided to drive over. So I got up real early in the morning and drove down there. And it was kind of like February, maybe. And one of those kind of storms came through.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just freezing and raining and ugly cold. And I went to the museum, and they had Muddy's Gold Top in the museum. They had the Muddy back by the cabin, and he's standing there with his gold top, and there's nobody in the museum. And I looked at the guy behind the counter, and I said, "How much to play the gold top?" And he said, I can't let you do it. And I said, I'd like to make a big donation to the Blues Museum right now. Would you let me play that guitar for 3 minutes? That's all I want to do is play that guitar for 3 minutes. And he's like, okay, nobody's here anyway. As he walks up to the mannequin of Muddy, the door opens and a busload of Japanese tourists come in.
Oh, dang.
And I'm just like, okay, I guess that's it. We're not going to hang around here for that. And I remember driving back in a horrible snowstorm back to Nashville, and I'm calling my wife on the phone going, can you give me, before there's the Weather Channel and all this crap, I'm going, can you give me some kind of like weather information here? Because it's just getting worse. Oh, no, can't help you. That's clear.
I'll tell you, the guitar was probably not set up very well.
Yeah, probably not. Who would have wanted it anyway?
Yeah, it was probably. It probably
Who would
wasn't.
have wanted to do that anyway?
I was in Memphis and I went to the Blues Museum that they have there, and they have what they call it an Albert Collins Telecaster, and he had a very distinctive Telecaster. It was a thin line hollow body telly with he had what they call lowrider tape over the bridge thing. And this guitar looked kind of like that, but it wasn't. And I thought, are they trying to pass this off as his telly? Because I don't think it is. Because it was like a solid body telly, not the thin line.
Yeah, he played a thin line. He played a thin line with a capo.
A capo, and it had that little duck. It had that little lowrider tape, the reflective tape.
Yeah.
On the bridge cover, and I go, they had the reflective tape on the bridge cover, but I go, this is not a thin line. It doesn't look like it's been played that much, and his guitar was always the thin line he played. You could tell it was just frets were barely there, kind of thing.
Somebody probably came in and offered the guard a bunch of money to play the guitar.
Where were you, Richard, at that?
I was not there. I almost got away with it. I thought it was going to happen.
Darn it. I would have got ways to work for you darn kids.
Darn kids. So when did you know you were going to do music? When did you really start doing music full time?
I don't know. I'm still figuring it out.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like there's no sort of definitive cut, thing where, there's a progression of things. I had done a lot of jobs in my life. I used to work for a science museum doing plays based on science. So we would write these shows with music and, funny skits and stuff like that. And it was a fun job. We would go scout schools and do these performances and stuff. So I told myself, well, I'm playing my guitar. I'm going there and I'm getting paid for it. So that's kind of cool. And then we'd play gigs, I was doing some other stuff around that. But finally, it just got to a point where I was starting to teach more. And I looked at the way other people were teaching. This says more about me as a teacher, I think, than as a performing musician. But I looked at the way other people were teaching music, and I go, they're not really preparing anything. They just kind of show up. They're all good musicians, but they're not really preparing things. So I said, you know what? There's a niche for me here to fill. So I started really working on materials for teaching. And that both informed my teaching and my performance stuff. So as I started to do more of these solo fingerstyle shows, which, that opens up a lot of venues for you because people, places that can't have a band with a lot of noise and stuff going on, they can, you can probably gig in other places, smaller venues and things like that as a solo acoustic player. So it's kind of an evolution of things, I was getting more gigs doing that. And I was also just teaching more. And as I did that, I finally said, I don't want to do this other stuff. And now I'm doing this. And then I got to write some books around it. And my affiliation with Acoustic Guitar Magazine has kept me rather busy for several years. And just writing curriculum for them. And that's kind of the way it evolved. This was never sort of a point where I'm just going to play music. Although I left my job. I go, I got to do this on my own. I got to do this by myself. I remember I can't work for another person anymore. That was, I guess that was in a way of sort of separating my life. And that was in my 40s when I did that.
I want to say that's a theme that runs through a lot of musicians.
Is it really? I don't know. I haven't.
I can't work for this guy. I just can't do that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think artists don't even want to make it all about guitar players, but photographers and all that, they just get to a spot where they just go, I don't know, I'd rather starve than.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing okay, and I knew I could make a living, having done it for several years, sort of part time, and so I kind of felt I got to a point of confidence, I guess, with the teaching and performing and stuff, where I go, I can do this. It's not that hard. You just got to take it seriously.
That's really true. We've talked to Happy Trom, we've talked to Adam, we've talked to Taya, and a lot of different ways people learn. Tim Connell, the mandolinist, a lot of different ways people teach, and providing content versus just showing up.
Providing content and with some understanding and how different people learn. Just understanding that you can't throw a page of music in front of everybody, and you can't just show everybody that is. Some people learn in different ways, but it being music, first and foremost, you got to get them to listen, and so that's the nuts and bolts of it. I hate it when I throw a sheet of music to someone and they haven't heard the song. I said, really, I should not throw this at you. You should go listen to this song lots and lots of times, and then go. And then actually decide if you like the song too. I mean, because I teach a lot of the fingerstyle blues stuff. It's really predicated on really learning the material, the songs, the compositions. And that's one thing that's kind of nice about it is you don't give people a ton of exercises. Some, sure. But just learning a 12-bar verse is a great way to just sort of like, okay, I'm going to learn this. And then you learn the technique of playing fingerstyle blues by just playing a song. And you got something in the end of the day to go, hey, I'll have a song in my back pocket, So, what was your question? I don't know what I went off on a tangent there.
No. I think it's really amazing how people learn, and your recognition of that in different people. I learn differently. I know I learn differently, but I think that understanding that, and you said something about teaching them to listen. Do you remember? I had somebody open my ears. I don't know how to say it any other way than that, but I had a situation where a really big time engineer sat me down in a really big studio, and we listened to music, and my ears became open. I mean, I know how many times I'd heard some things, but then I start to listen entirely differently, and I listen differently to this day.
I love those. Well, you mentioned that, like engineer, you see some of these like videos and stuff of so-and-so in a studio, or like Paul McCartney, they're listening and they're like using different faders to bring in what we wouldn't have heard on a final record or something like that. I say, here, this is where so-and-so did this thing. Listen to that. Isn't that great? Where you isolate things like that and you learn to listen to those things, it really becomes a really enriching experience. When I'm younger, it's all about the whole picture, right? A song, played by a band has this broad, just impression upon you. But then if you start to learn music and you learn, not only what the guitar player is doing, but what the bass player and what the drummer is doing and so forth, you sort of like, wow, this all fits together so nicely. And yet they're all doing different things, that becomes a real enriching and real kind of like, beautiful kind of experience, if you can hear music in that way, if you can hear how those sums of parts come together as a uniform sound. Even if you don't like certain pop bands or something like that, if you listen to some of the orchestration and just the arrangements of the music, you can just go, man, that's fantastic. It's just,
You really get that back to the Beatles, but you really get that impression from George Martin, that he knew what he was doing.
He allowed them to experiment,
exactly, to do anything, but they're fighting pet sounds, You know, they're up against Brian and they're up against all this stuff. So, but really, when you learn to listen, I mean, I still listen to things that I haven't heard in 10 or 15 years now. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's a cool part. Is that what he was doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting, and it is very enriching.
Yeah, and I think that's part of to being a student of music. Is getting you to listen in a different way. Getting it's like I really like blah blah blah. Okay, well listen to this. What is actually so and you sort of learn the skills and the techniques and the dexterity of it. You get this appreciation, like learning early blues stuff. Hey, these guys are keeping a steady bass line at the same time they're playing a melody. What the? I never, I may have heard this before, but I didn't really know what they were doing. I remember the first time I heard Merle Travis, I heard a song called Blue Smoke. And I listened to the song and go, it's okay. It's not like that. And then I realized, oh, that's one guitar. Oh, really? I was just blown away. That's one of the pivotal moments that got me playing in acoustic fingerstyle stuff. I was like, man, if I can make my guitar sound like two guitars, who needs a bass player?
Yeah. They're just trouble.
I love my bass player, by the way. So
I think a lot of what you're talking about is the difference between active participation and passive participation. And I think that's not just music. I think it's a lot of things in life. And I think it's a problem with a lot of young people. They don't learn how to actively participate in anything. There's just so much stuff thrown at them. The only way they can deal with it is passively and just kind of let it slide by. But learning how to become an active participant in something like music, where you can listen to the different parts and listen to what's really going on, is incredibly enriching. And it's one of the things that makes me so sad that our schools don't have the music and art programs that they really should have. We'd have better people around. But that's just me. You can edit that out.
That's a huge topic of conversation, but you're right. Schools, I feel sorry for schools. I feel sorry for teachers,
Yeah.
I don't get nearly enough money and support thrown at them, and during this COVID era, it's just been, I know several teachers who just threw up their arms and quit.
I sat on an advisory board for about 10 years for SPE, which is Society for Photographic Education. And boy, if you think there's people that are up to their wooganoogas in alligators right now, this is it, because you don't need to go to school for 4 years to learn how to take a picture.
You just have to buy a phone.
Yeah, that's about it. And all of a sudden, all these classes that they taught for all these years, I mean, I would listen to these instructors fight about one way, or we're going to teach it this way and this way. And I'm going, you guys don't understand. The kids have phones. You don't get it. Something's going to change here, and it's going to happen real fast. And they're going, oh no, we're never going to see as much imaging. We won't see any photographs anymore. And at that time, I think we were seeing images of about 700 a day, just in our normal day-to-day thing. And now we see something like over 14,000 or something like that. It's just,
yeah, well, that's another aspect of the whole education, and as a music teacher as well, guitar teachers, the technology around things and using things like Zoom to teach, and being aware of the technology without it running your life, kind of things like, and just just what the tools are we use and what we can use and how much it's just like. There's the amount of time, I'm from my own perspective, like how much time do I have to really learn the technology versus and stuff that I think is really good for helping to teach versus creating the actual curriculum content type stuff. So right now I'm just working more on video stuff. I bought myself a nice microphone and I bought myself a nice camera. So I've been working more on my video YouTube channel presence, because I know that's videos is how a lot of people are learning these days.
Neither of which you're using, but that's
yeah. I'm using a USB microphone right now, so
that's okay.
It's working.
Okay.
I didn't want to show off and try to get fancy here.
So Pete, at what level of students do you find you're teaching largely? Are they beginning? Are they already have some background playing guitar or tuning a guitar, or more advanced?
It's the full spectrum.
Okay.
Everything from beginners to more advanced students. The more advanced the people are and the more they pick up, the fewer of those I have. I think you get to a point as an advanced student where you pick it up on yourself by yourself on your own. I've shown you how to do it. You can go do it now, so you don't really need me. But sort of really beginner to intermediate is the bulk of my student clientele. And I have no problem teaching a beginner.
Yeah.
I like teaching beginners because I think getting them started off on the right foot is really important. And if they're going to enjoy music and enjoy the instrument, um, if they have someone who's not as experienced, they might try to give them stuff that's over their head or over their fingers. Just
Right.
um,
Well, one of the reasons I asked is it seems to me, remembering when my first guitar and everybody in my group guitar class 50 plus years ago, that nowadays it seems like the quality of instruments is so much better. And I'm wondering if you're noticing that with beginning guitar players, if they're walking in with instruments that you can tune and actually have decent action and a decent sound, as opposed to, I remember we'd spend the first half hour of class trying to tune some of these guitars that
yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I think you're right. I think a very correct statement is that instruments, even cheaper ones, are much better these days. You know, Sometimes you have a student comes in with I had this guitar that I found in my closet and it's got really high action, and you go, well, you should. I'm fortunate that when I teach my in-person stuff, that I teach out of a little shop in Berkeley called Timbre Folk, and there's a guy there who will actually work on the guitar for them. So I should say, you should have Mark, the guy's name's Mark, you should have Mark take a look at this and adjust the action for you so this becomes a playable guitar. I think that's important too. Is having he's a real nice guy, having a nice guy didn't have an attitude who will like fix your guitar for you for a reasonable price and get you started off on the right foot again. Just kind of uh, I do see it occasionally. A student come in and like, I've learned to play this D chord. Look, and I go, my God, you're doing a lot of work because your strings are that high off of the fretboard. I'm impressed, that you did that, but this is hard work. You're making it much harder on yourself, or the guitar is making it much harder.
sign up for my slide guitar class.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen stores do that where they go, good slide guitar. Do you want to talk slide for a minute? Because I do.
Yeah.
That was one of your questions, I guess, was like, how do I set up my guitar for slide? I don't really set it up any particular way. I'll put medium gauge strings on a guitar, which increases the tension ever so slightly and raises strings just a little bit above what people will consider normal action. So I play a brand of slide guitar called Bottleneck. So you Bottleneck versus lap slide. If you're playing like a dobro lap slide guitar, the guitar will sit, on your lap, and the strings are about that high off of the fretboard, and you're meant to be playing with a bar or steel or something like that. Bottleneck slide, you play the guitar like you normally play it, and you want to be able to fret notes and play, stuff along with the slide stuff you play. So for me, yes, I've been playing slide for a long time, and the better you get at that, the less you need a really high action to get a good sound. You can finesse it, in other words. But some guitars that have really high action and you can't fret the notes, it's not good because if it's really high and you try to press down a string, the intonation is shot. It's gone. You can't fret a note. So in the bottleneck world, where we want to be able to fret notes and use the slide, just a little bit above regular high action, and I can usually do that with medium gauge strings. On another guitar, I might use light gauge strings or lower tension strings.
What do you use for a slide?
I have friends at Jim Dunlop who supply me with everything I want, and slides and picks. Most of the time I use a ceramic slide, like this moonshine slide. But sometimes I'll use a brass one. Occasionally, if I play an electric slide, I'll use a thin glass slide. And again, I sort of view electric slide and acoustic slide as like two different things, two different sets of techniques.
Completely different worlds.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you're using the gain of the amp or pedal for your electric slide, so you don't want a big heavy slide like this that'll bang and make a lot of noise, harder to control. And plus you've got the distortion slash amp that's providing the sustain for you, so you don't really need a heavy. A heavier slide for acoustic gives you more sound. More mass equals more sound. So for acoustic, something heavier like a ceramic or a brass, relatively thick brass slide, is going to work better for you. But on the electric, thinner glass, thinner steel, something like that. And just the technique of damping the strings is different as well.
One thing that I think we've seen come out of the pandemic is this Zoom instruction. And it didn't get a chance to really evolve. It was all of a sudden one day everything was closed, and if you wanted to work or you wanted to eat, you had to understand how to do that. And you have to catch up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I can take lessons until I'm 90. I hope I can find somebody that will continue to teach me, because I think taking lessons and working with a teacher that you can relate to, you aren't going to quit guitar if you're still working on it.
Well, my 2 cents about Zoom is that there's the good and the bad of Zoom. The good is I can reach many people from in far distances on Zoom.
And you don't have to wear pants.
You don't have to wear pants. No, I require people to wear pants in my classes. Yeah, and people have a glass of wine or something right next to them. They're very comfortable at home. Let's just talk about the pluses of the Zoom. So I can, especially when I do classes, like I do like multi-person classes, like the Led Zeppelin class I'm teaching right now. I can have a group of people there. Usually when I'm doing a class like that, I'm presenting. I'm spending a lot of time like, this is how you play this. And I'm not asking people to play back to me. Now that's both a plus and a minus, actually.
And you're hoping they have their mics turned off.
I mute them. I have the control. Since it's my meeting, I mute them all. But, not to make that sound like, this is my class. No, I let them unmute themselves as we go and ask questions, which is great. Fine, I invite that all the time. But the nice thing for them is, like, people get very shy about playing in front of a teacher. I was like that in front of my teachers. My students, when they play in front of me, is I played this so well at home, but now I'm like, yeah, I know, I understand. It doesn't matter what I say; they're going to be nervous about playing in front of me. So on Zoom, if you're muted, you can noodle away and do things on your own without feeling like the world's hearing you, and that makes a lot of people more comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you're going to learn more. If you're uncomfortable, you're put on the spot, you feel like you're gonna tighten up, and not as much information is gonna filter in. Also, with the Zoom things like we're doing right now, like you're doing right, you record it, so you can come back and look at it later, and you go, I was noodling away when he said this other stuff, and I didn't catch that, so I can come back and do that. So I did it with all my classes. I tell my private students on Zoom, you will record certain passages, rather than you having to, if it's an hour lesson, don't film the whole hour. Just film the stuff that, pertinent to what it is. So you have that to go back and look at and listen to. So it's great. That's really good. I mean, you could do that in person with a camera, right? With your phone, like you said, you get it there and you can video record me as well. So in that respect, it's kind of the same thing. So that's a plus of a Zoom thing. I can have people from all over the world in my classes. They can noodle away in privacy. They can be learning. They can have captured for posterity and come back. The downside of that is, a couple of things. I'm not hearing them play, so I can't give them feedback. So they may be like playing something totally wrong, and I'm totally unaware of it. Um, and that's where I think a private teacher, coming to somebody in person is the best situation because, yes, well, I'm criticizing you. I'm giving you feedback to help you. I'm giving you something that you can take away. Like I always talk about people using their thumb over the neck. It's like, try to get your thumb on the neck that support your fingers. And that's a kind of a constant thing. And if I notice people doing that and I nip it in the bud early, then they can establish a better habit and become more facile and better on the instrument. So the direct feedback thing and seeing people and able to jam with people, like the Zoom thing too, as you or probably know, you have the latency issues and stuff like that. It's hard to jam with people. It's hard to play together. I may not be up on the latest, greatest aspects of Zoom. They may be able to reduce the latency stuff, but a little bit, yeah. I think it's still an issue, and I've heard other various folks who've tried to address this issue. There was one company, I forgot the name of it now, but they were trying to create some algorithms or something where people could play together. But to my knowledge, it really hasn't worked out as of yet.
Something that I realized as you were talking about the person being nervous in front of the teacher. So where's that guy in Guitar Center that's playing Stairway? And is that you? No,
I do it on purpose.
Yeah, no, but where is that? I haven't run into that guy on a Zoom class yet.
Because he's muted.
Yeah.
Well, I taught Stairway in my last Zeppelin class. So if you want to hear everybody,
no. I understand. I mean, you walk into certain guitar stores and there's signs up that says no Stairway.
Yeah. And I thought that was just a Wayne's World thing. I thought
it's not. It's real. It is real. If you're really into the entertainment aspect of it, Guitar Center Hollywood about 3:45 to 5 o'clock after they're out of school and before the parents come to get them. It's an experience. I do it every time I'm in LA just for the fun of it.
That would actually be a great class, Pete. Songs you're not allowed to play at Guitar Center.
Thank you. Dad, I think I'll do that.
You can do it.
I may sign up for it.
Well, so obviously Stairway is one. What else? Wish You Were Here?
Freebird.
Yep. Wish You Were Here. Wish You Were Here for sure.
I think it's just one of the people.
You have to pull a Beatles. You'd have to pull a Beatles out of there, but you can't because it's too good.
Yeah.
You might get some Stones. You might have a Stone song.
I think it Obla Di Obla Da Beatles. I think you should, but that doesn't really have a very good guitar line. But yeah.
That'd be tough. But
people might go look at you a little weird, but
they might clear a path to the doorway. But
yeah. I don't know. Okay, but I'm calling everybody first. What would be my song list for songs you should never play at Guitar Center?
We'll ask everybody on the forum to submit their answers for that to add to your class. We'll make this a group project for everybody who listens to the podcast and logs into the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum.
Songs you never want to hear.
As taught by Pete Madsen.
Of course, I'd have to teach horrible versions of the songs, right? It would just.
Well, not really. I mean, you could turn it into whatever you wanted to. I mean, you could just have a hint of the song and then let them get interested for about the first 30 seconds and then knock them over with the full riff, or whatever. I have been.
Yeah, Stairway's easy. You just tune the high E down like an 8th step.
Yeah. Don't blow his class, Tad.
Okay, I won't. All right.
Don't blow his class.
We should have him talk a bit more about his authorship, his book.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Here we go.
I want to apologize for not mentioning, first of all, your writing with acoustic guitar, the Cage system, It's fascinating and good stuff. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Well, I'll mention that the cage system thing. I wrote a book for Hal Leonard called The Cage System. And if you're not familiar with the cage system, it's taking first position chords. If you even played just a little bit of guitar, you know C, A, G, E, and D. And you start to sort of think of those instead of like those are just those chords. You can move those chord shapes. So it's kind of moving your thought from this is a chord to this is a chord shape that I can move up and down the neck of the guitar. So that's why it's called the cage system. Um, it's the book in that book I sort of introduce the cage system. I use major triads, minor triads, and seventh chords, and then I give a bunch of sort of chord progression examples on and how you could use those shapes up and down the deck. Now, the book I really wanted to write was not. I'm sorry.
Before you go too far, Pete, I would say pretend you're on the Home Shopping Network. Hold the cover up in front of the camera for us.
I don't. Gosh. Oh boy, I don't have it here.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
That was a thoughtless move on my part.
I thought you'd have a pile on your desk there so that when people call or send you an email, you can sign it real quick and ship it out.
Dang. I had some books here. Oh, God.
All right, we'll edit it out. Don't worry.
Oh, we're leaving it.
Feel free. I've already dug my own hole. I know. Anyways, the book I really wanted to write. So you can find the cage, called the Cage System, subtitle, easy way to navigate the entire guitar neck. Something like that.
Well, the important part is by Pete Madsen.
It's by Pete Madsen. So I got some books out there. Some have been done with publishers, and others have been done on my own. So I like the ones I do on my own because I write the book I want to write. So I did a book called Improvisation and Variations for Fingerstyle Blues Guitar. Insert copy. Looks like that. You can find it on my website if you're interested. Go to learnbluesguitarnow.com. Okay, that's enough of that.
Good.
No, we're going to add more of that.
Okay. But improvisation and variations for fingerstyle blues guitars. So what I do in that book is just the fingerstyle blues songs that people have learned usually are 3-chord songs, first position chords, yada yada. That's it, you know. But those songs are ripe for embellishment. So using that cage system really helps learn the fretboard and come up with variations / improvisation on songs that you've already learned. Or if you haven't already learned them, you learn them. I teach like a half dozen or so songs in the book, and then I show you embellishments and different verses using that cage system ideas. So I have found the cage system for me to be a great tool for fingerstyle blues, pre-war blues, and creating my own blues, which is another series I'm doing right now, Zoom lesson on just making variations of blues verses. Which I found, you know, if you're going to play blues, at some point you're going to want to put your own stamp on it. And here's a great way to put your own stamp out. Learn these chord variations up the neck. And it gives you sort of instrumental breaks or just makes the song more interesting in general, I think. Of course, the first thing you want to do is learn the song. You know, what's Stagger Lee by Mississippi John Hurt. Learn that song. Learn it the way Mississippi John Hurt did it. And then try these caged ideas up the neck. Then you can create new verses for that. So, I did that cage book. And then after that, I self-published my own improvisation and variations on fingerstyle blues. I've done a couple of books on Bottleneck slide. One of those is available on my website, A Guide to Bottleneck slide. The book I use the most in my teaching is a book called A Guide to Acoustic Blues Guitar, which I wrote about 15 years ago, and I'm now working on volume 2. So that's my main project right now. In between lessons and classes, what I'm working on is putting this second volume of this book, A Guide to Acoustic Blues Guitar, which is essentially a collection of songs in the genre, standard tuning, open tuning, some slide, some beginning exercises mixed in there, and hopefully that book will be available by April.
Wow.
So,
It's not in the harbor in LA.
In some container ship?
no, it hasn't been shipped out yet. I'm working on the recordings right now. I've done all the music notation tablature for the most part. I'm still working on some of those. It's probably about 35, 40 songs in it.
Wow.
I'm probably about 4/5 of the way with the music notation, and probably a little more than halfway with the recorded. So I like to put my recorded version of the song from which you're going to learn the music stuff. So I'm creating my own recordings of the songs. Plus, people can look them up to hear the originals, and so yeah.
Are you doing the recording at home?
Mm-hmm. Right here in this room with this microphone.
Yeah.
What is that microphone? Let's geek it.
Oh, there we go. Mike Geek.
It's a little bit. It's just called a Vanguard V13. Engineering friend of mine recommended it. So I guess it's a newer company. It cost me about $800, but he says it sounds like large diaphragm microphones that are worth twice as much. So
Nice. There's so many. Eric Sky, a good friend, is such a junkie on
he
microphones.
loves AKGs.
Yeah, well, no, I got a text from him the other night, and he and I had done some recording up in Santa Cruz 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, "Remember that mic we used at Keith's? What was that? Was that an 87 or an 89?" And I went back and said, I asked Keith, and he said it's an 89, and I just texted it back to Eric, and he just went, "Uh-oh."
What?
He took me through the Lewitt chain. He took me through all this stuff that's out there. And there's some really unbelievable microphones out there right now.
You know, that's why I have to talk to an engineering friend to get, because if left to my own devices, I probably would make a mistake.
I mean, yeah, the market is so huge, and it's so varied. You know, I mean, how do you find it? It's when we were starting, it was Neumann, AKG, and Shure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that was what you got. Maybe you got a Bogan or something like that, but that's what you had. And now it's just it's massive, and you're just doing it to the computer with an interface.
Yeah, I use a Focusrite Scarlett as my interface,
Right,
and
yeah.
there's a little preamp thing between that and the Focusrite as well, or powered preamp. Yeah, that's it. And it's just solo guitar parts.
Sure.
So it sounds pretty good for my ear. I think it's great. Sounds great. If I'm recording like my own CD stuff, I like to actually go to a studio with an engineer, have another set of ears, and somewhat. So I'm not worrying about all this mic placement stuff, and I just want to focus on the performance stuff. But for these are smaller, shorter clips and stuff like that, and it would be cumbersome to try to do that at a studio, I think. So doing it on my own here.
Chad?
Yes. Should we talk about guitars at all? What's your favorite guitar?
Choosing a favorite guitar is like choosing a favorite child.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I only have one child, so I have one favorite there. So. You know, they're all different. They do different things. It's like I couldn't tell you what my favorite band is. It's had different moods, different things.
Well, there goes that question.
Yeah, that was going.
Well, I'll tell you about the guitars I play the most.
Okay.
Right here, I have a Martin 0018. It's right behind me.
Uh-huh.
And I have a Martin OM28V. I've got my resonator guitar, my National Style O. Those are the acoustic guitars I probably play the most. I've got a Larrivee. God, I can't forget the model number. That's at my studio. That's going to make its maiden voyage into the live performance next week. going to be playing down at the Bistro in Hayward for their double IPA festival.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
The star is the beer. I'm just the background, but it's a fun time. I like to go down there and play. I've done a bunch of those in the past. Usually when I play an acoustic gig, I'll bring two guitars. I'll bring my resonator guitar, and I'll bring like the OM28V or the double O. So I usually bring two 6-string guitars. I have a 12-string Taylor, a 355, when I want to get my Leo Cockey on. Then I have a bunch of electric guitars too.
Wow.
The latest acquisition is this Bel Air Green
Ooh.
G&L Telecaster. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the G&L stuff, but it's a company Leo Fender started after he left Fender. And obviously it looks like a Telecaster, but it's got these slightly beefier pickups, and they're really cool sounding. I had to spend a little time on that guitar and get the right string gauges and set up the pickup heights and stuff like that to get the sound. But once I did that, it sounds great.
Nice.
I have a Warmest Stratocaster, which is my main guitar in my surf band. I have a electric surf band called Buzzy Frets. And we play a combination of surf instrumentals, rockabilly, blues, funk, whatever we want to play. That's a trio. And I play usually through a Fender Deluxe Reverb 64 reissue. I also got a Fender 1967 Super Reverb, blackface. Great amp, but big and heavy.
Big, yeah, big.
Yeah, so I'm kind of
loud and heavy.
Yeah, big, loud, and heavy. Great sounding amp, but I just that's why I went for the Deluxe Reverb. I said, this is enough. It's not light. It's like a 35, 40 pound amplifier, but you get to a certain age and you don't really want to lug around a big amp anymore. Yeah,
it's fun you say that, because I have a Deluxe Reverb Tone Master coming in tomorrow or Saturday.
Oh,
because it's only 22 pounds or 23 pounds.
That'll be real interesting to hear. I've heard some real interesting reports back on those that they sound pretty good. I don't know how you make them sound good without a tube in there, but I'm open.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna give it a try.
I'm all sold on tube amplifier. Yeah, I'm kind of a tube nut when it comes to electric amplification. Funny the way that is. You want your tubes for your electric guitar, and you don't want them for your acoustic guitar.
Do you have pickups, or do you use microphones for live?
Yeah, it's funny. That's a question I was just answering one of my students. I have pickups installed in my guitars. I call them a necessary evil. I know, like Eric Sky, he will not put a pickup in his guitar, and he always has to have a microphone. He'll bring his own microphone to a gig. That's fine if you got a sound, if the sound system is good and you got someone who knows what they're doing with the sound. But a lot of gigs I play, I'm in charge of my own sound. I'm in a small cafe or something like that. I'm using an AER amplifier. So I got to have a pickup in it. I told the student was asking me what kind of pickup I had in my resonator guitar, and I told him I have a Highlander pickup. And he goes, "I like the sound you get out of that." I said, "Yeah, but why do you want to put a pickup in your guitar?" He goes, "I just like the sound of it." I said, personally, if I wasn't performing, I would not put pickups in my acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. They are necessary evils.
Yeah, for acoustic guitars, it's not, the guitar is going to sound better acoustically without any electronics than it will putting electronics in it. That's just the fact of the matter. I don't care what modeling stuff you come up with or anything. I have to admit too that I don't like to spend a lot of time fussing around with gear. Get the real proper distance. I want to be able to dial it in and just leave it and go. So in that respect, I'm not a super gearhead. I don't really want to spend a lot of time with messing around with things.
Yeah, I just saw the Punch Brothers about 2 weeks ago, and they all worked around one microphone, which was really for the situation that they were in. We're in the Carmel Civic Center plot, unbelievable acoustic room. I missed hearing Thiele's vocals clearly. They didn't do that well.
Well, historically, that's a technique that like bluegrass players would use because they only had one microphone.
Right.
So that's a skill and art of itself, is learning how to use the microphone to feature whatever soloist is going, and then getting the vocal, mix right. That, there are people who, like Del McCurry is someone I saw.
Yeah.
His band, and they knew what they were doing. They knew how to space themselves with the microphone. And for all I know, they brought their own microphone too, because they know what that's going to sound like and how to work with that in performance. But
well, it was really beautiful to listen to, because Chris Etheridge would be kind of in the background, but yet right up front if he moved in, and it was very visual.
Well, it lends itself, I think, to that as well too. It's like, who's soloing. Like if you're on a stage and 4 people are spread out and you hear a guitar, but you can't go, where's the guitar player? But here, that person has come up front. They're the featured soloist, and yeah.
The stand-up was amplified.
That makes sense.
That does make complete sense.
What can you do? I mean, he's down here.
Yeah.
And to get the, you have to, when you put a pickup or something in with the stand-up bass players that I've worked with, you got to know where to place that pickup, so it's not going to get too woofy or woody.
Yeah. Any interest outside of music?
None. No, I'm just kidding. I like to hike. I've just started taking up mountain biking. I used to run a lot, and I blew out my knees. But going to the latest Marvel movie with my son, who's just a total Marvel comics movie nut.
That's cool. That's fun.
That's about it, I guess.
Yeah.
I need some more hobbies, though.
Do you think?
If the pandemic were over right now and you were given a pair of airplane tickets anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Whoa. Oh, where would I go? I'll tell you what. Right when the pandemic hit, my son had just graduated from high school, and we were supposed to take a trip to Japan for his high school graduation. But that was going to be also when the Olympics were going to be held. So that's going to be too crazy. Let's go to South Korea. So we had tickets to go to South Korea, stuff like that. I actually liked the first half. Japan, I would love to visit Japan. I've never been there. I think everything I've heard about Japanese culture sounds really interesting to me. I would love to visit Japan. That's probably number one on my list.
Great choice. Yeah. That's where my son chose to go when he graduated from college. We said, "Oh, you graduated. Oh my goodness, here, we're going to give you a plane ticket."
Well, my son is in college right now and he's studying Japanese. So,
wow.
So maybe that trip will happen in a couple of years or something. I don't know.
Hopefully not that long.
Well, when he graduates, right? He's a sophomore in college right now. So that could be a different graduation present.
There you go.
So now, you almost got to see the Great Dane come by here.
Yeah.
My wife's gone all day today, so I'm dog sitting all day, and I'm just waiting for him to come charging through the room. I guess we have to ask you, what's the best piece of advice anybody ever gave you?
I'm still waiting for it.
See how that worked?
I'm still waiting. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, Tad or Richard?
Keep your options open. I think I really do. I follow your heart. Believe in what you think is right. I don't know.
See, I have an internal voice, and I wouldn't say it's the best piece of advice, but as a musician, people, to make a living as a musician, you can people might say, well, you played a top 40 band, you do this or that. Like, you could do, I wouldn't say there's any one formula for it. For me, it was paying attention to my interests. I always followed my muse, as it were. Like, I like this, I'm going to study this. I have gone through many different styles of music, and of course, just by my nature, I just want to every few years. Although I've been sort of steeped in this acoustic blues stuff for about 20 years, I study different kind things because that's where my interest was, and that's what I was hearing, and from pop to rock to funk to some early jazz to the blues, the electric blues. For me, that just keeps me motivated and interested in playing and not getting jaded or cynical about the whole music industry. It's like I've got my own little niche. I'm not a household name or anything, I know, and I don't really care. But I'm able to make a living doing what I do because have played a lot of different styles, and I've sat down and actually gone to the curating process of creating content for my students. So there's a piece of advice I would give. If you're going to be a teacher, don't just show up. Do some, prepare some materials, and hopefully you will enjoy putting those materials together, because you'll see how your students respond to it, and that'll tell you. You get it for reward. It's like playing for an audience, right? The reward for us performers is playing for an audience. Well, as a teacher, preparing materials that you give to your students and watch them responding in a positive way, that's the reward.
I think that's true. I've taught a whole bunch in the photography video world, and that was one thing that was a motivation for me in wanting to do that. Was I see all these other guys that would show up for this week workshop in Santa Fe, and it would just be the fact that they were there, and isn't it cool to hang with me? And it's like, forget that, I mean, people are, if somebody comes to you to learn something, first of all, they've chosen you. Secondly, they've changed their life around so they can be part of what you're doing. You got to have some respect for that,
I have said, and that gives me a perfect segue. I have to say, I have scheduled a lesson for 4:00. I don't know if you.
Yeah,
we'll make it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm rapping right now. I'm just wanting to see if Tad's got anything to say.
Well,
You've been unbelievable with your time.
Yeah, it's been really great. But I think before we fade out entirely here, there are some people who are intelligent enough not to want to necessarily see our faces, and they're simply listening to this as a podcast. So they won't see the screens that we put up with your web links and such. So do you want to give us all those audibly for those people real quickly?
Yeah, so I've got two websites, learnbluesguitarnow.com, LearnBlues now.com, and then PeteMadsenGuitar.com.
So are those cross-linked? If somebody finds one, they can find the other?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I have to admit, I have not done a lot with the websites recently. I announced my classes on the LearnBluesGuitarNow.com website, so you'll see the current list of classes I'm teaching. You can see where my books and stuff are there. If you're more
music still there?
Yeah. And there's the music downloads for those books too. Those books get sold by me, where I send out a CD, but they also get sold by Amazon, which you don't get a CD. So if you order a book and you want the music, you can just go to that website and download the files right there. I also have something called a TrueFire channel, TrueFire. They have these channels, which have, my channel has a ton of content. It's about 250 videos.
Wow.
A bunch of tablatures. You can subscribe to it for $10 a month. I usually put 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 new videos up there every month.
How do we find that?
You just go to TrueFire.com and search channels for Pete Madsen.
Okay.
Cool.
Um,
Well, great. Everybody else who actually wants to see our mugs will actually see all those links spelled out on the screen and everything else. But thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your time today with us. And we hope everybody who's in the San Francisco Bay Area will get a chance to go out and see you live in the not too distant future. I'm looking forward to when you get back and maybe teaching some classes at the Freight and Salvage again.
I'm not sure. I've been teaching kind of on my own even before COVID. I kind of wasn't
Oh, okay.
in salvage anymore. So yeah, but you could go through me, through my website, through Timbre Folk. I think has a link, which is where I teach Timbre Folk, TIMBREFOLK.com.
Perfect.
That's where I teach in Berkeley, California. And want to thank you guys so much for allowing me to
Fun.
lather on here. It's been fun.
What fun.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous because, I've never really met. I know Tad no shit. But I had a blast. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you're doing this series, and I saw a lot of my friends up there, and I'm going to go listen to all the interviews you did with them.
All their troubles. Yeah. Thanks very much. You have a fantastic afternoon, okay?
All right, guys.
All
Take
right.
care.
Be well, Pete.
All right. And so everybody out there in podcast land, remember to log into the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum and submit those requests for songs you can never play in a Guitar Center. And we'll have Pete work on those.
Thanks very much. See you, Tad. Be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this installment of the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. For more music-related fun, please join the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF or santacruzguitarplayers.com. If you have any questions or possible podcast topics, please contact us. If you have a product or service that you feel would be of value to our listeners, please consider adding your support and keeping the coffee pot on. Contact us for more information. We ask that you hit the like, follow, bell, or bookmark buttons so we can keep you informed of upcoming podcast episodes. We hope you enjoyed Santa Cruz Coffee Break. Now it's time to go play your guitar.